Hello, and welcome to another AARP Arizona Happy Hour virtual tour. I am Brenda with the Arizona State Office of AARP. We are the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that is dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. With a nationwide presence, AARP strengthens communities and advocates for what matters most to the more than 100 million Americans 50 plus and their families: health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. AARP also produces the nation's largest circulation publications, the AARP Magazine and the AARP Bulletin. During this month, AARP will offer events and enriching experiences close to home and from your home that help you make connections and serve others. While our situations are different, our need for connection is universal. Now more than ever, we know that connecting with family and friends is vital to aging well and living longer and having happier lives. Visit us at aarp.org/AZ for more information. Thank you again for attending, and with that, I will turn things over to Marshall.
Folks, welcome to the show. Get ready to meet your host for the night, Arizona's very own hip historian himself, Marshall Shore.
Hello and good evening. I want to welcome you all to Arizona History Happy Hour. So happy that you can join us this evening. Oh my gosh. So welcome. I see some of you already found the chat. We've got a great show for you this evening. Oh my gosh. So my name is Marshall Shore. I'm also known as the Hip Historian. But more importantly, today is October 12th. And so, back on this date in 1929, the city of Florence dedicated its new airport with an aerial circus and speeches. They then had their own municipal airport. It is also Drink Local Wine Day, which is a day where we can all join together and drink local wine, which is quickly becoming if you go to Cottonwood right now, oh my gosh, Maynard Keenan is doing some really great stuff there. If you go south down to Wilcox, you can find some great wine down there. So it's a great way to celebrate. It is also National Farm Day. Speaking of growing all those grapes, this is a day where we get to pay homage and tribute to those folks that work so hard to keep food on our tables. And, and even when you look at the history of Arizona, it's like you've got citrus and cotton, 2 of the 5 C's are agriculture or farm-based. It is also National Free Thought Day. So that is, it's a day that promotes logic and evidence-based thinking and gives opportunity for free thinkers to build a sense of community. Now, they chose this date actually because it was the end of the Salem witch trials back in 1692. Now, it is also National Gumbo Day. That is that big Cajun dish with lots of bold flavors that has meat, shellfish, vegetables, but it's got that holy trinity of celery, bell pepper, and onions that just make everything taste so good. So what can you expect from tonight? Well, we've got a little bit of trivia. We've got a little Arizona history, as well as some music history. And indeed, there is a beverage, a special guest, and something called From the Vault, which is something you might see or go by on a regular basis, but not know the history behind it. So as I said, my name is Marshall Shore. I am also known as the Hip Historian. And so that means I get to have all kinds of fun with Arizona history. Coming up early next year is the 95th anniversary of the Orpheum Theater. And so we are going to be doing Arizona Unzipped, an amazing educational burlesque show. So keep your ears out for that, your eyes peeled for that. And if you want to, go to unzipped.com and you get tickets right now, or go visit the Orpheum Theater. Also, if you get a chance, Tempe History Museum has a great Tempe sign exhibit up right now, as well as some Legend City memorabilia up at Sunny Slope Historical Society. Both well worth a visit. And then, coming up in just a few weeks, November 4th, you've got Grand Avenue Festival coming back for its 14th celebration of Grand Avenue, as well as a presentation called Art and the City. They are doing an exhibition, and so that is the Museum of Arizona Artists Association doing that. And tomorrow, I'm going to be at the State Fair. I'm so excited because I love going to the State Fair. I actually have been holding off going because I'm going to get a chance to go tomorrow. And then we're doing some other fun stuff there on Sunday, recording some history, starting to do work on a project for already looking at next year. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then coming up in just a couple of weeks on October 21st and 28th, my friend Deb and I, who I see is on tonight, and we are going to be doing our haunted history tour of downtown Phoenix, which we've been doing for over a decade, a variation on that tour. So that's going to be lots of fun. So join us. You can find tickets for that at hiphistorian.com. Now, I see Deb has found the chat, and Felicia, you're on. Good to see you. So, you can reach out if you're not on chat. You can also reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, email, or via my website. And so it would not be happy hour without a beverage. And so PJ suggested that for our topic tonight, we are doing the Mexican lager from Huss Brewing Company, the Rio Salado, because they've started by buying a defunct brewery called Rio Salado. And of course, we're going to talk about some water history as well as the night goes on. So, I love PJ because he always finds a connection. Oh, and that's nice and smooth. All right. So now we're going to chance to talk a little about Little Arizona. So we are going to talk about the town of St. John's, which is in Apache County, established in 1880, has a population just under 3,500. And so, this area was home to, for centuries, other communities. And so they left behind ruins. And so you can go visit some of those spots and check out where the Anasazi have lived for a couple of thousand years. You can find petroglyphs, all kinds of really cool things going on out there, as well as they discovered basically hippos, like 40 hippos hanging out under the dirt. They dug and found those. And so those are now in museums and dioramas across the country. And you can check out the Apache County Historical Society and find out the history of St. John's, which was originally called El Vadito, meaning Little River Crossing. And then it became St. John's or San Juan, and wasn't until the 50s, it actually wasn't then designated as a town. So be sure and get out to St. John's and have a little adventure. All right. Well, now is a chance you get to hear from someone else other than just me. And I am going to bring on Zarco. Hello, Zarco. Oh, you are muted. So let's see. Oh, so he's going to pop back in with that, I've seen Zarco. He did an amazing presentation at what is now the Pseudo-Kiev Museum, where he donned a variety of masks and told some amazing stories about Arizona, its history through time and everything else. And so looking forward to that. And hello again.
Hello.
All right. So Zarco, for those that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a local boy, born and raised in Mesa. My family are descendants of the Mexicans that were here when this was Mexico. So we never immigrated, we migrated. And so we've been here for forever. We're descendants of the indigenous people of northern Mexico and southern California. And of course, mixed with all the other ethnicities coming and going, for the last 5 centuries through the Southwest. So yeah, I'm a local homeboy. I'm an artist, community activist. We have a nonprofit organization. Our big shindig is our Dia de los Muertos celebration, October 29th, that is now decolonized and no longer called a false term as Dia de los Muertos. It's called Miquixli, which actually means transcendence. And that's what the day is literally all about, transcendence. It has nothing to do with death. So we're redefining all that, decolonizing all the misconceptions and fake news.
Very good. All right. So we are going to do a little bit of trivia. Now, with trivia here in Happy Hour, it's a little different than if you're used to bar trivia, where it's more about, do you know the answer, yes or no? But we've got our questions, and then we'll come back and talk about the correct answer and the history behind them. And
Cool.
So you can keep track of the trivia wherever you would like. Some folks will keep track of it in the chat session. If Anita's watching, she has a special notebook she uses. Whatever you want to do, it's all good. And so, all right. So question 1, what river joins the Salt River in the Phoenix area? Is it A, the Colorado River, B, the Gila River, C, Agua Fria River, or the D, Pantona Wash? So which one of those do you think joins with the Salt River right here in the area? All right. How many tribal groups are in Arizona? Is it A, 12, B, 19, C, 22, or D, 26? How many tribal groups are in Arizona? All right. Question 3. What people supposedly engineered our current canal system? A, white, B, Hohokam, C, Hohugam, or D, Hispanic? So which one of those groups do you think engineered our current canal system? All right. Now, maybe have you helped me, Zarco? I'm probably going to mispronounce a few of these. So, all right.
Okay.
So question
is what is the native name for the indigenous territory? A is Alshon, B is Tohono, C is O'odham Javid, and D is Wigwam.
All right. Well done. All right. Question 5. In what century did the Spanish arrive to the Arizona territory? Is it A, the 16th, B, the 17th, C, the 18th, or D, the 19th? So which century do you think the Spanish arrived here to Arizona? All right. Question 6. What major crop did they introduce? Was it A, agave, B, maize, C, wheat, or D, squash? So what crop do you think that indigenous folks introduced? All right, moving on to number 7. Who was a major foe of Western expansion? A, Federalist, B, Mexico, C, Geronimo, or D, women? Who was a major foe of Western expansion? All right. Question 8. What fort near Phoenix launched a hunt for Geronimo? Was it A, Fort Huachuca, B, Fort Bowie, Fort Bowie, not David Bowie, but Bowie, C, Fort McDowell, or D, Fort Lowell? All right. Question 9. What dam stopped the river's flow? Was it A, Parker, B. Hoover, C. Glen Canyon, or D. Roosevelt? And here we are at our last question. What Arizona native tribe migrated north to escape persecution? A. The Papago, C. The Yaqui, B. Yaqui, C. Apache, or D. Navajo? All right. So while you are all locking in your final answers, we are going to take a quick Arizona music break, and we're going to talk about Lalo Guerrero. Oh my gosh. So Lalo, I know, is considered to be the godfather of Chicano music. Born down in Tucson, he recorded over 700 songs, wrote a bunch of those. Some of them range from parodies to quite substantial songs, and some just very humorous. He also was sent to New York World's Fair as a representative from Arizona. Sadly, as far as we know, there are no photos of him in New York. So if anybody out there happens to have a photo passed down through their family of Lalo in New York at the World's Fair, I would love to see that. All right. And he did a lot of different things. He worked with farmers' rights. He also wrote music that was about the struggle of the dignity of the zoot suiters, which were those really oversized suits. And so that music actually became the basis for the Zoot Suit Riot that they actually put on a couple years ago in LA. And sadly, I couldn't get there for that. Mm-hmm. As well as he preserved his music working with Roy Cooter. So did I miss anything major, Zarco?
Yeah, he was awarded the Medal of Arts award.
Oh, that's right. I forgot those awards.
Yeah, by what's his name, President Clinton. He was also a Grammy Award winner. He did a children's album with Chicha Marin, and he wrote some of Mexico's biggest hits. A couple of his songs are sung by every single mariachi. That's how popular. Yeah, one of the songs he wrote is almost considered like the Mexican national anthem. And he's a Chicano from Tucson. So he's a Guerrero. I'm a Guerrero. We're not related by blood, but we're related by fate. And that's a story I have to tell you next time.
Oh, all right. I definitely want to have you on to talk about that. All right. So now we're ready for some answers. Oh my gosh. This is where the fun starts to happen. All right. So what river joins the Salt River in the Phoenix area? And that's B, the Gila River. So what's the story with water?
Yeah.
So do you have any more to add to the Salt River?
Well, you want me to start talking about this right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, currently, recently, I've become a speaker for the Arizona Humanities Council, storyteller. And I have a program that's called The Gila and the Salt, Our River Stories. And I tell the 2,000-year-old history of the valley. What was happening here 2,000 years ago? And what events transpired over time to get us to where we are today. And so the name, the Gila and the Salt, for many, many years, if you grow up in the valley, many people drove over the Gila and the Salt rivers, but they never saw any water in them, right? So what was it like when these rivers actually flowed? And of course, we go back to 2,000 years ago. We go back to the time of the ancestral Sonoran Desert people, who are called many names, including the Hohokam. And we know now that this group of people managed to create a very highly sophisticated water distribution system that allowed them to grow great amounts of corn, beans, squash, and cotton, making this area here in Arizona, the convolutes of the Gila and the Salt, one of the most important places for trade, cultural exchange, a scientific exchange in all of North America, because there was a direct connection between uh, uh, this area, the heat and the salt, and the pyramid of the sun, Tenochtitlan. That they were a big part of that trade route. So that tells you how sophisticated and how worldly and international, whatever, the people who lived here really were.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. We would not be here without them.
Yeah, exactly. And so all of our water distribution system basically today is built on top of what was built before. So that's one part of the story, the Hohokam, right? Well, they all of a sudden, supposedly, I'm using the words that I've read, they left around 1250 AD. Okay. As a matter of fact, it was during that time that many major metropolitan areas of the Southwest were abandoned, including Chaco Canyon, Mesa Verde, so on. All these large Puebloan sites uh, that had been inhabited for well over 1,000 years, some many more, were all of a sudden were abandoned. And so the story goes, the people migrated south and went to Mexico. Migrated to Mexico. The people who stayed here are the people that we know today as the Akimelatam, the Pima, and the Tohono the Papago. And so they claim to be descendants of the Hohokam, and they call the Hohokam the Huhugam.
All right, so let's go on to our next question.
Yeah.
So that kind of ties into where you're going in the fact that there are, how many tribes are in Arizona? 22. And I think we have the most of any place in the country.
Could be. And since we're on the subject right now, the people that were called the Pima, that are now the Akimelatam from Salt River, by 1850s, they could grow so much corn, beans, and squash that they were considered the breadbasket of the migration west. And they were considered at that time the most prosperous of all Indian nations. This is 850. Our native people were the most prosperous of all Indian nations in the country. Why? Because they had not only great farmers, but they were part of this extensive trade route, and they were traders. They traded their products, their services, right? So that's how important this area was.
Wow. All right. So we were talking about basically who supposedly engineered our current canal system, and it is both the Hohokam and the Hohugam.
Yeah. So the Hohokam is an archaeological term, but the natives use the term Huhugam, which means something. It means our ancestors, not yours, not mine, theirs, right? And so here we see, I love this illustration because it gives you an idea of how abundant the farms were here, and the abundance of crops and herbs and spices and chilies and cotton. The best cotton was grown by them at this time. It was replaced by an inferior cotton that we use today that grew faster, and grew more plentiful, but needed a lot more water.
Oh.
See what I'm saying? So the cotton we had before was better cotton, but required almost no water. And another thing I like to mention too, because the whole story is about the fact that, we destroyed this ecosystem. It was ecocide. We destroyed a whole, system of rivers and creeks and beavers, dams, and it was amazing. It was like a Garden of Eden. And even long droughts didn't affect them because the beavers built dams that created ponds. So there was always water and fish, even if it didn't rain. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So this went on until well, even after the Spanish came, the Spanish introduced wheat, because we already had corn, beans, and squash. We weren't starving to death, right?
Right.
They introduced wheat.
All right. I
Because
think
they
that
wanted.
might actually be. I think that might. Is that our next question? Oh no, that's not our next question.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go to the next question then.
All right. So, what is the native name for their territory?
Autumn Javid. A lot of people call Autumn Javid. Autumn Javid. So as I was mentioning before, there's different ways of spelling it, and I've heard it pronounced different ways by natives themselves. So don't feel bad if you don't get it first time. And they're using it more and more, and you're going to see that term in the Phoenix area more often than ever before.
Well, and I think it's also interesting that, I mean, it's like you've got the Pueblo Grande Museum, which is now renamed the Sudoakif. Yeah. So right. I think more and more things are going back respectful of those earlier communities.
Yeah, well, we renamed our Day of the Dead, our Dia de los Muertos.
Right.
We decolonized that term.
Right. All right. And what century did the Spanish arrive in Arizona? Well, the Arizona Territory, because it wasn't a state yet.
Yeah, that's right. Arizona Territory, yeah. It was not yet a territory either.
Right. It was just land.
Yeah. Yeah, that was in the 1600s.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the people in the Papua, they were friendly people. They weren't hostile to outsiders because they were about trade, right? So when the white man migrated west, the O'odham saw them as trading partners, right? It was a big deal. You got this new people they're passing through. That's great. They need corn, they need beans, they need blankets, they need cotton, they need all these things. Plus, they're bringing tools and metal and all these different tools, right? So in comes the Apache, who were screwing up their trade routes. So they fought to protect the white settlers from the Apaches. It wasn't because they had any love for the white settlers, but they wanted to keep their trade routes open. And that's what they had to do.
Oh, so they were just doing business.
That's right. They were good at it.
All right. And this goes back to, what was the major crops did they bring with them to the indigenous people? And it was wheat.
So when the whites started passing through on their way to California, the gold rush, well, they found wheat, bread, tortillas. You know what I mean? They're like, dude, this is heaven. You know, there's abundance, and the people who are growing the wheat now, again, were the Pima.
Ah.
Before the white man appropriated it and built what's called Mills Crossing there, the flour mill.
Oh, yeah.
Then they took over the production of wheat.
Ah.
Because when the dam was complete, now let's talk about the dam.
Oh, is that? Oh, no. So, okay. So first we're going to talk about Geronimo.
Yeah.
So who was a major foe of Western expansion? Geronimo.
Yeah. Yep. He was a pain in the ass. A wonderful story. Yeah, great man.
So tell us about Geronimo.
Well, not only was he we know him as a warrior, but he was also a very highly praised medicine man. And what we call in Mexico, we refer to as a nahual, or a person that other people, maybe you might call a shaman, even though we don't like to use that word shaman, we use a nahual, who's a person has powers that we might consider, unnatural or whatever, superpowers. But he fought to the very end, to the detriment of to the extent that his people just abandoned him. They joined him at first because they wanted to fight for their territory, for their land, but then it became too difficult, and he kept fighting. And they never captured him. He surrendered because his people asked him to. So when he stopped fighting, then the Apache War stopped because they were going on in Mexico as well.
All right. And what fort near Phoenix launched a hunt for Geronimo?
Right there, Fort McDowell, where the casino is now. The Pima and the Yavapai assisted the cavalry to hunt down Geronimo, and many Apaches were included as well as scouts because they knew where he was. Otherwise, they would have never found him.
Because didn't he surrender in the Chiricahuas?
What's that?
Did he surrender in the Chiricahuas? Or is that where he hid out?
That's where he hid out. Where he surrendered was in Nogales, in that place that's now a restaurant, the Cave.
Oh,
you ever been there?
I've seen it. I've never been there.
Yeah, there's a whole photo essay of Geronimo there with the cavalry and everything inside the cave there.
Wow. And so let's talk a little bit about some more water. So question 9, what dam stopped the river's flow?
The Roosevelt Dam.
So no more was it just the beavers, but now we started building these huge dams.
Right. Well, in my story, I tell of when white settlers were arriving in great numbers, and they loved it here, man. They were welcomed by the natives, who were very generous and hospitable. They protected them from the Apaches. They loved it here, man. All kinds of water. They saw the natives farming all this land, and there was much more land to be farmed, and there were canals going out miles and miles into the desert that weren't being used, right? So they started to get this idea. There were farmers, they needed water, so they needed labor to build to redig these canals. Well, that was around 1912, 1910 during the Mexican Revolution, when the Yaquis were migrating in great numbers, fleeing persecution in Mexico, and they were river people too. They were farming along the Yaqui River in Mexico, so they came here. They knew how to dig canals. They knew how to engineer. They knew how to maintain irrigation systems. So they redid all of these canals. They helped build the water infrastructure. So when the dam was finally complete, here we got a little bit more on the Yaqui. We can go there because the Yaquis are now in Guadalupe. Mm-hmm. Right there where Arizona Mills is located. That's where the Yaqui town of Guadalupe is today. Right. And so that's where they settled in a couple of different settlements. The other one was being in Scottsdale is where they settled as well.
Well, and I think it's really interesting that with Guadalupe, it's like they really keep that a closed community. So it really is a Yaqui community in the middle of this metropolitan area, which I think is really beautiful.
Well, it's definitely it's a Mexican American community, but the Yaquis are a big part of it. And they, of course, they've been blending with Mexicans, let's say, for centuries. Right. They want to be known as a sovereign people. They're Yaqui, but they're also Mexicans. They have a Mexican passport. They speak the language. They love the music. They sing mariachi. They do ballet folklorico. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And Chicanos like myself, we grew up with the Yaquis. We grew up with their ceremonies, with their, so it's part of us too, part of our culture here in the Valley.
So one of the things when we were talking earlier, you had mentioned wheat and kind of that with that wheat, there was also lard and whiskey. And so really kind of creating this detrimental diet. So,
well, what happened? Think about it like this, white settlers arrived and they find this paradise of farmland and rivers flowing right through here and irrigation canals going everywhere. They see the potential they want to put their farms too, right? So the people say, yeah, here's some land over here. You can use this land here, blah, blah, blah. More and more people started settling upstream, taking water for their crops. Well, the natives thought, well, we've been doing this for 1,000 years. We never use more than we need. There's always enough water. They didn't have a concept of not enough water. So when more and more people started taking their water upstream, all of a sudden, these people who were living on the lower Salt River, who had these amazing farms, all of a sudden, they had no water. They had no food. They didn't know how to do anything but farm and fish. Now their farms are gone, their fish is gone. So they had to leave their farming communities. They were put on the reservation, and then the government says, here's flour, lard, salt, and sugar. Oh, and here's a gallon of welfare whiskey too to go with that. So that was it, man. It was over.
Wow.
Their world was destroyed. They weren't massacred. They were starved to death. And did you know that story?
I knew about that because as the pandemic was ending, the Herd Museum had this really great exhibit. I think it was like Things Are Larger Than They Appear.
Uh-huh.
And there was this great display. It was this glittery white table covered with bread, cakes, pastries. And then on the walls, they started doing like eye charts. And it was starting to get you to realize that this food was developed not because it was nutritious, but it was available. And that sugar didn't do anybody any good. And a lot of times they were trying to figure out how to use rancid lard. And I mean, it was just one of those moments where, really art communicates so much better than a textbook.
Yeah. Well, think about it like this too. When they were in their natural environment, lived their culture and their heritage, they lived to be over 100 years old. There was no disease. And they were long distance runners like the Tarahumara in Mexico. Almost all Native people were long distance runners.
Right.
So they went from that to being the highest diabetic rate in the world, not in Arizona, not in the country, on the planet.
Wow.
And like all other Native peoples, they're plagued with, of course, diabetes for one thing, heart disease, alcoholism, suicide. That's all a result of this terrible tragedy that took place that nobody talks about. A lot of people don't even know it. It's horrible. But I think we need to know this. We need to know what we did, how we were able to live and flourish in the desert for thousands of years. Of course, there's a lot more people now. But anyway, it's a beautiful story as well.
It is indeed. I mean, and the way you tell it with the mask and everything is just beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
So, all right. So I always like to ask people how they did, and see Mike already jumped in and said he got 9 out of 10. Actually, it was really good. Wow. I'm like, we should have made the questions harder. Oh my gosh. But I also really would like you to talk about the event coming up on the 29th. I mean, talk about the change of names of that decolonization. Yeah.
Well, I'll say first of all that Dia de los Muertos, we began celebrating Dia de los Muertos. When I say we, the Chicano community in the Southwest, in the early and late 70s, we were becoming indigenized. We were decolonizing, and so we looked to Mexico for our heritage, our indigenous roots that we were, not exposed to in many cases, right? So Dia de los Muertos is, for us, is an indigenous celebration. It comes not from Spain. It's not Hispanic. It's not Latino. The Spanish didn't bring it. The Olmecs were celebrating 3,000 years ago. This is an American, the most continuously reenacted American celebration in all North and South America, right? Continually. So we wanted to connect ourselves to that heritage. And so we started celebrating Dia de los Muertos as a form of resistance and affirmation. This was protest. We were not going to celebrate Halloween. We were not even going to celebrate Cinco de Mayo and 16th of September. We were going to celebrate, as our indigenous ancestors did, Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. But it now has become gentrified, commercialized. This image that you see, the skull, is called the Mikishli. It's not a sugar skull, it's a Mikishli. And the Mikishli represents transcendence, not death. It represents freedom from the flesh and the ego. And the only thing that's left is the bones. So our ancestors are bones. So we celebrate our ancestors by, hanging up, wearing bones, dressing up the skeletons and honoring skeletons, decorating them. We decorate the dead as a way to honor that ancestry and those ancient traditions. So that's basically what it is. We're the only decolonized Dia de los Muertos in the state, and we're also the largest, and we're also free, and so that's still in the school park.
Wow. So what kinds of things can people expect to see while they're there and experience?
Well, you'll see a more kind of homegrown Phoenix thing. There's more where a lot of it has to do with I say Aztec, but I really mean ancient Mexican language, food, the building of altars, all our dances that all the different dance companies that dance with the mask are researching ancient traditions and things and translate them into for the Day of the Dead. So a lot of art, music, poetry. It's a blast. Intergenerational, family friendly, a lot of good food. Yeah, it's a blast. It's a big deal.
So can you talk a little? Oh yeah, no, I mean it's going to be so much fun. So building of altars. So what is the significance of the altars?
Well, of course, there's many different kind of altars, but the altar that we think about is, okay, there's the Mikishli, or in the Nahuatl language, is called Mikael Wiki, which means feast of the spirits. There's no mention of death, and there's no mention of one day. It was a month-long celebration, and the Spanish came along and said, hey, that's too much. You get one day, and we're going to do it around All Saints Day. So they took away the true meaning of the celebration, right? So, okay, where was I? I lost my train of thought.
So we were talking about kind of building of the altars. So
yeah, so the altars. So people believe that we can entice the spirits to come back by creating a feast. So you make their favorite food so that the house, the neighborhood fills up with all the fragrance of the tamales and the tortillas and the roasting chilies. And not only that, you put on their favorite music, right, that they listen to, put it on loud so they can hear it. You burn incense so they can smell the incense, and you fill as much room as you can with marigold flowers because of their color and their smell, because they can smell, right, the spirits. That's our most vivid sense. So we entice them to come back. We put up their photographs, we tell stories about them. So by mentioning them, keeping their memories alive, they're not dead. So there's no death. As a matter of fact, there's no word for death in the Aztec language. Why? Because it didn't exist. Those things have meaning for some people.
But I love the fact that it's this whole process of now kind of explaining that it's very different than Day of the Dead, something completely different, and kind of that decolonization of that, and then explaining more of the other culture involvement.
Yeah. So that's what's going on the 29th. But I also want to mention, I don't know if you have it on here, what's going on the 18th of October.
Oh, what's going on the 18th?
Hey, I'm sorry we don't have a visual, but as you know, or maybe you don't know, Carmen and I had a band years ago called Zoom Zoom Zoom. We were one of the most popular Latin bands in Phoenix, a New Times Best Latin Band. We haven't played in over 20 years. So we're having a reunion at the Crescent Ballroom. There's going to be 4 bands, including Zoom Zoom Zoom. And we're trying to do a fundraiser to raise money to pay all our McKeeshley artists. So this is going to start being an annual event. It's called the Calaca Cafe at the Crescent Ballroom on Wednesday, October 18th. So you got to come to that too.
So, oh my gosh, that sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast.
So I'm right now I'm looking for the link so I can post that.
Yeah, Culture Coalition has that somewhere, I'm sure.
Let's see. And you said, oh, the 18th. Let's see. So indeed. So I will post this in the chat.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we got a lot going on. This is busy. Our busiest time of year is right now.
Indeed, you know, fall is always, it's like that weather is now spectacular. So everyone's always, I mean, there's so much going on. Exactly. It's time for the windows to be open now. Once the sun goes down, the weather gets really beautiful. So yeah, so Wednesday the 18th looks like a lot of fun as well.
Yeah.
So Zarco, I want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing your passion, your knowledge, your connection to so much.
Oh, thank you.
So, I mean, every program I've attended of yours has always left me just kind of, oh my gosh. The variety of stories, the art that you create that carries so much more than just pretty art.
Yeah.
That says so much more.
Well, thank you.
You are welcome. So yeah, right. So everybody should need to get out to Crescent Ballroom on the 18th. And then, all right. So now I'm going to try and pronounce McKeeshley.
McKeeshley.
McKeeshley. Ah, okay.
Yeah.
McKeeshley.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. And you know, and that is such a nicer way, I think, to put it than even like, because it's all about, I mean, and so it really is all about transcendence as opposed to mourning. But
yeah, and that's why this image, the McKeeshley image, we also call it the Calaca, that's why it's smiling. That's why it's decorated. It's meant to evoke laughter and not fear. You know, like a Halloween skull, that, you know, it's death, that's poison, it's all those negative, dark things. It's all about light. Look at the light beaming from the Calaca, from the McKeeshley, right? It's transcendent. It's alive.
Indeed. So Zarco, again, thank you so much. And I really do want to have you come back and we can do a whole episode about Lalo. Because he was such an amazing guy.
Yeah.
That just did so much through music.
Yeah. Made history.
Yeah, I mean, made history
in the United States.
I mean, built bridges using music.
Yeah.
And so
and the gringos didn't like him because they said he was Mexican. The Mexicans didn't like him because they said he was a gringo.
Oh, I never realized that.
Yeah, that's a whole story too. I got to tell you that one.
Oh my gosh. See, I look forward to the next happy hour, but I also look forward to seeing you on your upcoming events.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your night.
Good night. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches. Oh my gosh. That was, again, Zarco, thank you so much for sharing your stories. And I always look forward to hearing more stories from you. So now you'll see why I say if you're watching on Facebook, you've got that little share button. Click on it because we want people to know how much fun we are having with Arizona history, how many stories there are. And so as we get ready to do From the Vault, so, going on right now through the 29th is the State Fair. And so this was the original grandstand that then wound up burning down in the mid 30s. And with that, there was horse racing, there was car racing, and the fairgrounds, the grandstands then got rebuilt, and there was so much going on. So this was basically 36, 37 for this. It was a WPA project, it was Work Progress Administration. And so it was headquartered at the fairgrounds, but they also built a lot of spaces there, including this one. And you'll notice that there's all those plaques above. I think there's 22 of those. So there's so much history. And what a beautiful space. I mean, you've got Marilyn Monroe filming Bus Stop there. You had the Bobby Ball race. There was the Cactus Derby that was a road race between LA and Phoenix and wound up at the fairgrounds. So there was so much going on. Foot races, camel races, so many things happened at the grandstands, including the Rodeo of Rodeos by the Phoenix Junior JCs. And so I look forward to getting out and spending more time looking at the grandstands, looking at just that history. I love the fact with the fair, it's been there since 1905. Back before we were even a state, it was still a territory. So, that's one of the things I love about going to the fair is exploring the history. And so we're going to be doing a little video getting ready for next year for the state fair. There'll be a QR code driven tour of at least the grandstand. We'll see what else we can squeeze in before they close it down for the state fair, before the state fair ends. All right. Oh my gosh. And I forgot. It's like, okay. So when you think of the fairgrounds, it also housed the very first private airport in Phoenix. And so that's why on the rooftop of the stadium, you have the word Phoenix with an arrow pointing towards Sky Harbor. Next week, we have Deb Branning on talking about hauntings and spooky stuff across Arizona. So you don't want to miss that. That's going to be a lot of fun as we get ready for our tours coming up in just a couple of weeks. You can find more information about those tours on hiphistorian.com. So Deb will be here next week at 7:00 on Thursday night for amazing stories. So, all right, everyone. I always love to say, please reach out if you have ideas, comments, stories. Cindy, thank you much. Yeah, I mean, Zarco has so much packed into his brain. I love the way he presents it whenever he does programs that are just beautifully done. So as we say goodnight, I always like to give a shout out to Chris and Cole, who did that cute video at the very beginning, as well as PJ for always keeping me in the loop with a variety of beverages on so many different topics. And so as we talk a little bit about, kind of the agricultural history and other communities, I want to end on a video we did at Baseline Flowers, talking and celebrating the Japanese flower gardens. Hey, Local Buzz, Marshall Shore, the hip historian here, and we are here at Baseline Flowers, and we have Kathy Nakagawa. And so the reason why we're here is because the history, you'll see the sign behind me that says flowers. This is the last trace of what, for almost 50 years, was an iconic scene in Phoenix. Being able to drive along Baseline and see these flower fields, growing flowers that people were buying. They were shipped all over the world. And it really evolved out of, you had farmers that sadly were then sent to Japanese internment camps. They came back and reestablished their farms, their families, and started a whole new life, again, creating what was a point of pride for Phoenix. And so you can come here, take a look at some flowers, buy some flowers, look at this great little gift shop. We're down here on Baseline and 38th Street, so come on down and visit. So this is why you should like, follow, share, because here on Local Buzz, we're going to be bringing you more history and lots of Arizona love.